So again, good morning class. So welcome to our lesson 5 or the module 5, which is called perception. So let's start. So the learning objective this lesson will be defining perception, understand how perception affects human behavior, identify factors that influence perception. So, introduction. People are subject to beliefs, have motives or intentions. When we observe people, we attempt to develop explanations of why they behave in a certain way. So, ano lang, parang kung nag-observe tao or like, kung natay ma-observe sa isa ka tao, kanang murag usay gatry ta og judge or like gatry ta og ga-attempt ta og develop og explanation nganong nabuhat nila to or nganong anong inato ang nahitabo, 'di ba? Without wala pa kayo tay information kung ano gyud unsa gyud, 'di ba? Kay so kana. So our perception and judgment of a person's actions will be significantly influenced by the assumptions we make about the person's behavior. So ma-impluwensyahan gyud siya ang ato ang mga assumptions regard and they perceive, 'di ba, sa isa ka action or sa isa ka behavior sa isa ka tao. So, what is perception? So, it is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information in order to represent and understand the environment. So, yun, organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory, meaning senses. So, all perception involves signals in the nervous system which in turn result from physical or chemical stimulation of the sense organs. So, the sense organs, smell, touch, di ba? Sight. So, it is not a passive or receipt of these signals but is shaped by learning, memory, expectation, and attention. So, yun. So, ma-shape siya. Mga signals. Ay, the receipt of these signals but it's shaped by learning. Memory. So, learning. Itong lesson 4. So, syempre, once maka-learn ta, murag, syempre, diba? Memory. So, once about, ano sa perception is memory. Masense na to ngayon na nilagay example sa food, diba? Oh, alam mo ka nang paras lagi sila sa taste sa inani, no? Diba? Expectation and attention. So, like, as you can see sa picture, 'di ba? May nana ang perception sa babae is 6 iyang nakita, ang sa tigulang na lalaki is 9 sa iyang sa iyang side. So, ikaw, imo nakita is 69. So, 'di ba? Ang imo nakita is 69 tapos syempre, ah when we perceive that number, 'di ba? Murag daghan tag maisip, 'di ba? Naiuban mag-isip ka, 69 is just a number, napay uban nga naay hidden meaning or naay green mind meaning. So, 'di ba, inana ang mga perception. So, 'di ba? So, it depends sa person kung paano niya i 'di ba, i-ano ang information, i-organize, paano niya i-identify, and paano niya i-interpret. Diba? Diba na lang siya ang perception. So, perception includes the five senses: touch, sight, taste, smell, and sound. It also includes what is known as perception, a set of senses involving the ability to detect changes the in body positions and movements. So it also involves the cognitive process required to process information such as recognizing the face of a friend or detecting a familiar perfume. So ang cognitive process sa imong brain. So recognizing the face. The study of these perpetual processes shows that their functioning is affected by three classes of variables. So the three classes of variables are the objects or the events being perceived. So ang object or ang events nga imong gina perceive or imong gina una-una. So parang na or maybe the person. So second one is the environment in which the perception occurs. Malay mo diba? Kung asa nga place, asa ang environment and the individual doing the perceiving. The individual doing the perceiving or mismong ikaw. O, diba? So, that are the three classes of variables sa sa ano sa process sa perception. So, the object, the environment, and the person, the perceiver. So, this is the perceiver. So, in simple words, we can say that the perception is the act of seeing what is there to be seen. Diba? Seeing what is there to be seen. So this is what you believe, ana. So, but what is seen is influenced by the perceiver. So, perceiver, the object, and its environment. Maulagi ito. Diba? The three classes of variables. So, the meaning of perception emphasizes all these 3 points. The object, its environment, and the perceiver. So, the importance of perception. So, dagan dyan siya class. So, perception is very important in understanding human behavior because every person perceives the world and approaches life problems differently. So, kita, diba, lahi-lahi man gyud ta. So, approaches life problems differently. Example na lang is in a group. In a group, loy, yatagan mo og group project, diba na may usahay nga group, ka-grupo ninyo nga kanang example, mag-isip mo og idea about especially FS or like, diba, usahay kay ang uban kay uy magkit kani ato ang i-business niya ang uban kay murag dili imong isa ka uban kay murag dili siya ganahan napay uban nga oo lang sige kana na lang ana so murag ana good so although kanang uh, one example po is kanang same mo og kanang naagyan na problem pero lahi-lahi ang inyong approach sa pag-solve sa problem, diba? Whatever we see or feel is not necessarily the same as it really is. So when we buy something, it is not because it is the best, but because we take it to the best. Diba? Oh. So kung nagapalita og something, diba, dili man ginaingon nga kanang best jud siya. Wala na to ginaisip na because it is the best, but because we take it to the best. Kaya nga to ang perception is mao ni ang best para sa ato. Diba? Sabi na kung mag-decide ta, decision making po, diba? Diba? Kaya syempre kung mag-decision ta, naiuban syempre mo na nga, ay ganun ka naman yung magipili, ana. So, for them, lahi ang the best, pero para sa imo is for the best ang kami imong choice. If people behave on the basis of their perception, we can predict their behavior in the changed circumstances by understanding their present perception of the environment. So, yun. If kita nagabehave po ta based sa atong mga perceptions, so, ma-understand natin isa ka tao kung paano po sila mag-behave, diba? So, one person may be viewing the facts in one way, which may be different from the facts as seen by another viewer. So, mo to ang picture ganina, and is one of the example. So, diba, kung ano yung nakikita mo on your view, sa other person, the other view is different. So, with the help of perception, the needs of various people can be determined because people's perception is influenced by their needs. So, di ba? So, yung perception po is makatabang pero ma-determine nato kung I mean, makatabang ang perception kay para ma-determine ko nato kung unsa ang ano needs sa other people. Kaya syempre, ma-influensyahan man pod sa needs ang ilang mga perception. So, it is very important for the manager who wants to avoid making errors when dealing with the people and events in the work setting. So, this problem is made more complicated by the fact that different people perceive the same situation differently. So, yun nga kanina, 'di ba? Lahi-lahi og perception. So, in order to deal with the subordinates effectively, the manager must understand their perceptions properly. So, 'di ba? So, important siya sa isa ka manager para at least ma-avoid niya og makahimo og errors, especially pag magatag siya og task sa mga empleyado, sa iyang employee, 'di ba? So, like example, same task, gihatag nimo sa ilaha tanan isa-isa, pero lahi-lahi ang ilang perception. Naiuban mo ingon nga kanang sa man lisod man ang gihatag ni sir. Naiuban kay kanang ma-challenge, 'di ba? Okay sila, ganahan sila. Naiuban kay kanang for the sake of ano lang, syempre nagtrabaho man ko diri, so himuon na lang nako ni hanagon. So ana, so if ever ang manager is wise enough na makabalo kung paano mag-perceive ang isa ka empleyado niya, at least ah maisip niya nga na ni kani kay ihatag nako ni kay kuan. Kaya marag okay ra ni sa iya nga task. Lahi lang akong ihatag kay blah 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 ano, di ba? Ano. So ma-properly kanang distribute ang task. So, perception can be important because it offers more than objective output. It ingests an observation and manufactures an altered reality enriched with previous experiences. So, sa perception kay syempre it's enriched with previous experiences kay syempre kung once na-experience na nimo ang isa ka bagay, so murag mas magkaroon ka na og idea kung unsa ang result sa isa ka butang, di ba? For example, na so perception builds character, not necessarily good or bad character that defines different roles individuals fall into the clown, the hypocrite, the self-righteous, the victim, etc. So yun. So perception builds character that defines different roles of individuals. So parang from the perception sa perception murag ma-perceive nimo nga kanang ay okay ano siya murag nasa sa group sa mga tao nga sige pakatawa or like katawanan, 'di ba? Like mga clown, ano, mga joker, 'di ba? Tapos sa ma-perceive nimo nga kanang pukrito maning tawanan yan na so ana murag kuan ko. So naiuban nga self-righteous, 'di ba? Naiuban nga kanang victim na usahay ma-perceive niyo plastic makikaoy or something ana, 'di ba? Mga perception mo. Like dalok ka nga pagkatao tao ana. So murag ana lang gud mga perception. So it is vitally important if we want to get along with others to try to see things from their perspective or walk in their shoes for a while. If we walk in their shoes, we will gain a new perspective about things and in that understand the other people and also can love and help the other more appropriately. So, yun. So, it's vitally important. Kaya nga naman, para at least makaget along pa yun tao more sa isa ka tao kay syempre pag kabalot ta kung unsa ilang perception like ingon nga diri we walk in their shoes, so parang mga mailahan makita na to kung unsa ilang mga makita, diba? Unsa di ilang ano perception sa isa ka bagay and you will find out na kanang okay mao din different day yang pagkakita ani nga butang nga situation ako alahi po. So putting yourself in that in other people's shoes So murag ma-understand mo siya, and ana, at least mas maging more ano ang inyong love, and you can help them more appropriately. So murag inyong relationship is mag ano gyud, diba? So di ba naman po tay ginaingon nga kanang put yourself in my shoes, kung para makita nimo kung unsa gyud ana unsa gyud akong na feel, unsa gyud ang naging unsa gyud ang naging effect sa ako at least magkaroon of more understanding with each other, or like with the person, especially kung friend mo siya, or like family member, or uyab ana. Pero wala man kay uyab, so tuyo na lang. So thus, for understanding human behavior, it is very important to understand their perception, that is how they perceive the different situations. So understanding human behavior is understanding how people perceive different situations. So personal characteristics that affect perception includes of person's attitude, personality, motives, interest, past experiences, and expectations. So mao na sila mga maka-apekto jud sa perception nato. So di ba? Attitude, so ang attitude din nimo is kanang buan na kay attitude na na kay personality nga kanang example, maldita jud ka. So when you perceive things in a maldita way, so na kay attitude na suko na yun ana, ra kayo ka masuko ana, or like impatient ka, diba? Excuse me, impatient ka, so syempre dali lang ka masuko. So yung perception maglahi jud ayon sa isa ka kuan, kay like example, kung impatient ka, syempre ang katong nga tao nga kanang murag sa mukha niya ay dugaya pod niya, oy, so murag mag-perceive din ka og something, tapos inig-organize, inig-identify sa imong brain mo na kanang sige siya ka late comer jud kay na siya, so ma-affect imong perception sa imong motives, sa imong interest, diba? So if interest nimo nga, if imong interest kay ganahan kay ka, idol kay nimo ang kuan, diba? Idol kay nimo ang BTS, ang kuan, Blackpink kana. Tapos na ay tao nga wala ka kaila, but sila fan girling ana. Murag uy kay nang ana, so murag inig-perceive nimo nga kanang labutan siguro ni siya na paras man mag interest na good. Past experiences, so murag kanang na kay ma-feel, or like diba something, siguro past experiences like na broken ka, diba? So maapektuhan po din mo ang perception, diba? Kay example magsulod na pug ka nga kanang makitaan nimo siya, makitaan nimo imong katong partner, og parehas lagi sila og kanang attitude or personality sa akong ex nga katong gipasakitan jud ko. Diba? So murag mag-perceive dayon ka nga kanang basig mahug na pud ang mahitabo sa kubiyahan na pud ko niya, bulagan ako niya. So ana, and then again wala man kay uyab, so walay mo bulag nimo og puyo. So and expectations, so ana, expectations versus reality, diba? So mao na siya sa imong maapektuhan imong perception, because you expect things na natapos in reality dili di ay. So that's why ana, so there are some factors that influence the target, such as novelty, motion, sound, size, background, proximity, similarity. So muna na siya ang target, meaning ang katong thing, or object, or situation na imong gina-perceive. So, syempre like motion, 'di ba? Motion kung unsa ayang lihok o paspas. Paspas ba siya or inay? Sounds kung saba or ano, dili. So, sa like example, ang naay place nga kanang dili jud kaganahan nga sa saba. So, murag dili na ta manghawa na ta diri kay sama man ni kay diri. So, murag, tapos i-judge na nimo nga kanang saba man kay na dira nga area. Pero may man nga ano dira. The size, 'di ba? The size matter. Char lang. Parang anak kung papilion ka og isa ka thing, 'di ba? Like syempre usahay magkaroon og influence ang kanang sizes, 'di ba? Especially sa food, 'di ba? Or unsa na siya nga kanang kailangan gyud naapoy size. So background, proximity, similarity mo na siya class. So there are also some situational factors like the time of perceiving others, work settings, social settings, etc. which influence the perception process. So mga settings na siya sa mga situations na naman ni siya. Ato ganina is personal factors, kani is situational factors, the work settings, the social settings, mga environment or like 'di ba kung asa imo inyo asa ang ano. Kaya 'di ba ganina is katong the object, uh, the environment, and the perceiver. So beside these three, ay, beside these three, sorry, beside this, there are some other factors like perceptual learning, which is based on past experiences or any special training that we get. Every one of us learns to emphasize some sensory inputs and to ignore others. So another factor is mental set, which refers to preparedness or readiness to receive some sensory input. So ulahi ang title. So, three stages of perception process. One is the selection. So, the world around us is filled with an infinite number of stimuli. So, daghan og mga when you say stimuli is kanang marag naga-trigger, di ba? That we might attend. So, but our brains do not have the resources to pay attention to everything. So, daghan jud og mga kanang trigger sa atong mind. But wala resources kayo to pay attention sa tanan. So syempre na certain thing lang na imuhang mahatagan og attention, di ba? So kung ikaw wala kanya nahatag attention, so that's wala kay di jud ka importante sa iya. Lahi nga stimuli ang iyang nahatagan og attention. So selecting is the first part of the perception process, in which we focus our attention on a certain incoming sensory information. So, in selection, we choose stimuli that attract our attention. So, kung wala siya na-attract sa imuha, so, kulang, kulang pa ang pagpapansin. So, charot. But we focus on the ones that stand out. No, di ba? That stand out to our senses. So, sight, siguro, gapuhan kay siya, di ba? Ganahan kay siya magtanaw sa iya ha, dili sa imuha. Char lang. Sa sound, sa smell, sa taste, siguro lami gid siya taste man. Lami gid siguro ang katong kuan nga pagkaon, lami siguro katong nga ice cream. Lami kay siguro ang iyang ice cream, di ba? Kaya nga banana flavor pag yun iyang ice cream. So mas lami kaysa sa imong baligya nga ice cream, di ba? Banana flavor. And touch. Joke lang, char lang. We take information through all five of our senses, but our perceptual field includes so many stimuli that it is impossible for our brains to process and make sense of it all. So, dili jud tanan. So, organization, number two. So, once we have chosen to attend a stimulus in the environment, the choice sets of a series of reactions in our brain. So, yun na, magkaroon na og reaction. So, thus, yun lang, yun po sa, syempre as a, so to ganina sa selection is like, 'Di ba kung naay gapanguyab sa isa ka girl, na example dalawa or tatlo sila, so syempre naano na yung mga perceptions ang babae nga kanang hala kanang gwapo siya or like 'di ba, naghatag siya og bulak kanang 'di ba, sweet siya na mga feelings 'di ba. So iyan na lang i-perceive. So diri naman sa organization, so yun mao lagi to i-organize niya sa iyang brain nga activation of our sensory receptor touch. So murag ang isa kay touch siya sa hair, 'di ba? Ang isa kay kanang gina holding hands siya, 'di ba? So murag maka-feel siya og kanang nindot kayo ana. So state, smell, sight, and hearing ana. Ganahan siya sa kanang voice sa isa kay murag okay lang ano, like nang compliment niya. Dito ni mo voice okay ana. Mga anak na mga perceptions, mga organization sa imong perception. So organizing is the second part of the perception process in which we sort and categorize information that we perceive based on innate and learned cognitive patterns. So based on other innate and cognitive patterns. So atong way of thinking. So the ways we sort things into patterns are by using proximity, similarity, and differences. So proximity. Similarity, yang similar, yang pagkakapareho. And the difference, ang pagkakaiba. The third one is the interpretation. So after we have attended the stimulus in our brains have received and organized the information, yun na, we interpret it in a new way, in a way that makes sense using our existing information about the world. Interpretation simply means that we take the information that we have sensed and organize and turn it into something that we can categorize. So, yun na nga. Nagsilap na ka og stimuli and you already organize it. So, that's the time na i-perceive na nimo or i-interpret na di ay ang isa ka bagay na ano, based on siguro yung mga experiences nimo sa imong motive, sa imong interest, or any unsa pa ang mga factor nga naka-affect sa perception mo. So, sa time siguro interpret mo or mura kag mamili na ka sa ilang okay. Dito lang ko sa iya kay murag ilaga ko niya really. Love jud ko niya. Oh. Sana all love. Sana all mahal. So interpretation and categorization are generally the most subjective areas of perception. So as they involve decisions about whether listeners like what they hear or ano to? Wait lang. So, yun, diba? As they involve decisions about whether listeners like what they hear and want to keep listening. So, parang, diba? Kung ikaw, para ani, yung perception from the start pa, kanang di ka ganahan sa ako voice, or like, dili ka ganahan mamina, or like, napakoy himuon. So, later na lang na, session na. So, mga perception, okay. Pagtira man i-review ang video, so, sunod na lang ako paminawon. Ano. So, ano lang, so, if ever like, nanaka sa tunga-tunga sa video, yeah, marag, I'm tired, or like, wala ko na to answer lang. Ano, God, so, marag, wala lang ka na minaw. For the sake of the, ano lang, for the char, for the sake of kanang, na ako sa klase, sir. Joke lang. Pero, some, siguro, ana. So, we make immediate evaluations that cause automatic judgment of positive and negative reactions towards others, so which occur outside of our awareness. So outside of our awareness, magkakaroon dahil taog automatic judgment. It's either positive or negative. towards others, towards their actions, di ba? Kay mao man to atong na-perceive, mao to atong na-select, mao na to atong na-organize, and mao to atong na-interpret, which occur outside of our awareness na wala jud ta kabalo. At mao na dito ang ato ang perception. So the selection, organization, and interpretation of perception can differ among different people. So, lahi ta og point of views, diba? That's why there's a sign na, what's your opinion about ano? So, although maingon jud ta nga same lang ko akong opinion siya sir, but naagyapon tayo madungag, diba? So, on the basis of this, the perceptual output, that means values, attitudes, behavior, etc. of the perceiver may differ. The basis, the perceptual output, so maglailahi ato ang meaning, maglailahi ato ang values, maglailahi ato ang pwede mag-change pa ato ang behavior, diba? So therefore, when people act differently in a situation, or of their behavior can be explained by examining their perceptual process and how their perceptions are leading to their responses. These are errors in and perception. But before anything else, bago ta mag sa last na. So, icebreaker muna tayo. So, our icebreaker is kanin siya. So, you need to choose, tatlo lang na siya. You need, from that three colors, you need to choose one. Then, yellow, red, blue. So, tapos, i-PM sa ko, i-private message sa ko, ang napili ni mo nga color. Then, from that, taga natin ka og points sa imong recitation, and naghatag ni mo og color. If ang question na akong ihatag sa imo, ang question nga akong ipangutana sa imo nga is maansiran pa gid nimo, so add another points. So send ka na PM na, and don't tell anyone, don't tell your classmate. So diba? So mo ni siya akong ginaingon sa imo nga magiging masaya ka talaga. So send na, PM na your color, your chosen color. So yun, back to our last so murag mao na lang pud ni ang last. So unsa ba ni siya sir? So mga errors sa perception, so pagkamali po dito perceive, of course kay lahi man tag view. Then syempre na po times nga ang iyang view is mao dito ang tama, diba? Mao dito ang perception niya tama. So murag, so sa illusion is, the illusion is a false perception. So here the person will mistake a stimulus and perceive it wrongly. So for example, in the dark, a rope is mistaken as a snake. So diba? So parang illusion lang din siya. So parang sabi ni mo bitin, snake, rope lang dito kung nasa ngit. So the voice of an unknown person is mistaken as a friend's voice. So diba diba? So wala ta kabalo niya. Kadungog lang tao something. Sila mo sikuan. Ano mo dili lahi din na tao, magparehas lang sila og voice. So a person standing at a distance who is not known may be perceived as a known person. So parang sikuan, mag syempre iyang indog, di ba? Iyang height, kailan mo but paduol kay ay dili di ay stranger, so on. So hallucination. So hallucination naman, it's sometimes we come across instances where the individual perceives some stimulus even when it is not present. So nag-hallucinate ta bisag wala kabutang. So this phenomenon is known as hallucination. So the person may see an object, person, etc., or he may listen to some voice, though there are no objects and sounds in reality. So parang so nawakwak na aswang ka girl. Na kay madungog nga voices. Sorry lang. Parang hallucination, errors in perception. So, so halo effect. Wala nila gibutang ang selective perception. So halo effect. So the individual is evaluated on the basis of perceived positive quality, feature, or trait. So parang more siya kanang sa organization pa is kanang performance evaluation sa mga employees. So when we drew a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristics such as intelligence, sociability, and or appearance, a halo effect is operating. So, in other words, this is the tendency to rate a man uniformly high or low in other traits if he is ordinarily high or low in one particular trait. So parang isahan lang nimo ang rating sa iyaha kung high ka sa isa, so tanan na uniform na nimo imong ratings. High nimo tanan or low imong rating sa iyaha sa number 1 na question or number 1 na rating sa iyaha. So uniform na po nimo i-low nimo tanan. So pag halo effect. For example, if a worker has few absences, the supervisor might give him a high rating in all other areas of work. So parang iyang setting na absences, so dili kay ka ga-absent, so high ang rating sa kuan niya. Tapos kaso sa work kay ano day ka kanang hinay, pero kay halo effect man, mao naman to ang first na rating sa imong manager sa imuha kay dili kay ka pala absent. So high pud gapon yung ibutang dito sa imong performance sa kapaspason ba nimo bisag kaya ka ano halo effect. So uniformity sa iyang rating. So stereotyping, so people usually can fall into at least one general category. So marami siya ang stereotyping, but categorizing people based on a physical or behavioral traits. Then they will be evaluated. When we judge someone on the basis of our perception of the group to which he or she belongs, we are using the shortcut called stereotyping. So parang ano ba? So, for example, a boss might assume that a worker from a Middle East country is lazy and cannot meet performance objectives, even if the worker tried his best. So, di ba? Ana ang stereotyping mo siya og kanang somehow discriminating, di ba? Okay, kuan ka, kung example katong ah, Korea versus Philippines, di ba? Pag uban nga tao nga naga-stereotype nga kanang because of one mistake sa isa ka tao, so murag iya nang i-group ang like nakamali ang isa ka Pinoy sa agawa, so therefore na ay tao nga mag-perceive na or mag-stereotype na inana tanan nga Pinoy. Similarity, so isa sa error sa perception, often people tend to seek out and rate more positively those who are similar to themselves. This tendency to approve of similarity may cause evaluators to give better ratings to employees who exhibit the same interest, work methods, points of views, or standards. So when you perceive, especially mapuna siya ang kanang mali sa pag mangkot sa performance evaluation rating kay kanang parehas may interest na nagod, parehas may ways sa work, parehas may points of view. So okay, hatagan ako ni siya og dako nga score kay murag parehas na good. So horn effect, when the individual is completely evaluated on the basis of negative quality or feature perceived. So this results in an overall lower rating than an acceptable rate. So he is not formally dressed up in the office. That's why he may be casual at work too. Parang so naalay negative. So negative na tanan. And then contrast. So from the word contrast, contra, diba? The tendency to rate people relative to other people rather than to the individual performance he or she is doing. So rather will evaluate an employee by comparing the employee's performance with other employees. So parang kung i-rate nimo ang tao or i-perceive nimo ang tao mo, gina-compare nimo siya. So good. So instead na siya nindot na buhat, pero in comparing sa iya kay mas ganahan ka tong isa, so murag good. Ikaw ang kawawa kay wala ka niya gipili. So lang. Yeah, that's I guess that's also in summary, perception is the process by which people see, observe, interpret, respond to information from their environment. So perception is influenced by the characteristics of the perceiver, target, and situation. So target or the object. So perceiver, personal characters, affect the perception, past experience, motives, etc. So that's it for this lesson 5. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Bye. Goodbye.